Welcome to the podcast. Súbele volumen. Conversation with the people who were with me. In the world of TV. Carlos tonight. Historias de un reportero. Carlos tonight. Dale que viene lo bueno.
Hey everyone, it's Carlos tonight. Thank you so much for being here. I appreciate it. Before I introduce my guest this week, I want to invite you to check out my website. That's carlostonight.com. There you can see upcoming guests, check out past episodes, and sign up to my weekly newsletter. So my guest this week is Mike Lamele, who might have the love story of all love stories. And he joins me now to talk a little bit about that. And hey, Mike, how are you?
Hey, Carlos. It's nice to be here. I love that. The love story of all love stories. I guess we'll see today. It's a lot of pressure you're putting on me.
Yeah, when I heard your story on social media, I'm like, oh, I have to have him as my guest to talk about it. So where does your story begin, your love story?
Yeah, so I guess it begins on the bathroom floor vomiting blood. So, I was pretty early in life, pretty successful person. I started a PR agency when I was just 22 years old. And I had kind of that hard partying lifestyle, right? So I was working with a lot of healthcare reform, tech billionaires. I was going out 6 days a week. I was working really hard. And one day after a party, I woke up and I was vomiting blood. And that was understandably really scary. I vomited blood for about 2 months straight every day, which was terrifying. I was seeing a lot of different doctors. There was a time where I actually shit my pants at work, so I couldn't even use my, control my bowels. That was kind of my low point. I realized, if you're shitting your pants at work, something is wrong here. And I just kind of made it my mission to get better. So I was at acupuncture, reflexology, Reiki, like you name it. If it was a modality out there, whether I believed in it or not, didn't matter. I had to do what I could. Mm-hmm. And while this was going on, I had two roommates at the time, but one of them, was in a relationship, so was never home. And the other one was a guy I knew from college. We were friendly enough. And he was on medical residency. He was a pharmacist on residency. And so he knew the medical system and he was home. And by default, he kind of became my de facto caretaker, right? So I couldn't even leave the house because I would be vomiting blood or going to the bathroom. So he'd have to pick up my medications, eventually start cooking me dinner. And about 2 months into this, I realized that I had feelings for him. And this was strange for me at the time because up until that point in my life, I had never been with a man. To my conscious knowledge, never been interested in a man. And it didn't feel sexual. It didn't even feel romantic, but it felt like something's different here. And to kind of give you that insight into my mind, like I was afraid I was going to die. So I was kind of wondering, is this just a human within proximity? And I'm like, scared I'm going to die. So it's anybody. And I was doing some pretty crazy things at the time. Like I thought I was going to die. So I was writing handwritten letters to every member of my family, saying everything I've never said out loud. And I was doing all types of crazy stuff, just like anything I could do to heal. And so it got to a point where I realized, I could die tomorrow. I can't just brush this under the rug. I'm going to say something. He might want to punch me. He might kick me out of his home. I don't know what's going to happen, but I'm going to say something to him. And so I got up the nerve. And I eventually said to him, Garrett, his name's Garrett, I don't know how to talk about this. It doesn't feel sexual or even romantic, but like this feels like more than a friendship and something's happening here. And I don't know what to do with that, but I felt like I had to say something. And I'm really fortunate that Garrett is probably the most thoughtful person in the world. And he said, okay, I don't know what to do with that, but let me sit with this. And so, I'm condensing a lot of months into a very short story today.
Your heart must have been pumping when you were telling me.
Oh my gosh, I was sweating. I was probably just disgusting. I mean, I didn't know what to expect, but also I had been on this journey where every day I thought today could be the day I die. And so when you're in that space, your mentality changes quite a bit and you kind of become, brutally, radically honest. And so we, over the course of the next few months, had kind of emails back and forth. It's kind of funny to say emails when you live with someone, but you have to process these emotions. It's not something you can kind of say in the moment. And so long story short, we decided to try to explore a relationship. It wasn't a physical relationship. We were dating women still, having sex with women, but it was something that was an emotional relationship that we wanted to explore.
Mhm.
And so, partially because we were afraid that what if I die or get better and then we just don't want to be together anymore? We weren't telling people in our lives because we didn't know what this meant right now. We didn't
Right.
want to take on a label that we were, bisexual, pansexual, gay. So we explored this while we dated women for about a year and a half. And at the end of that year and a half, I had quit my job. Understandably, if you're vomiting blood, probably a good idea.
Yeah.
I did what I never, ever, ever recommend anyone do, which is I gave a year's notice at work because, I was an owner of this company. I felt like that's the right thing, get them in a good spot. And it just kind of happened that we were ready to tell people, or tell our families at least, about the same time I was leaving my job. And so we told our families. Everyone got there eventually. Not everybody was understanding at first. I won't name names today. But I was kind of in this new job and I didn't know what I was doing with my life. I thought I'll just be like the health coach herbalist to Boston's tech entrepreneurs because I got really sick. These people are stressed out. Maybe I can help them out. And I didn't love it. And so I started thinking, well, I was successful at a very young age and it wasn't what it was cracked up to be. What if I started blogging about this, talking about my experiences, not my relationship, but my experiences with success? And about 3 months into this, my blog really picked up some steam and a publisher reached out and offered me a book deal, which right? Like, does that happen?
Yeah.
Someone just emails you a book deal, but it did happen. So I said, yeah, if you're going to pay me, I'll write something.
Right.
So I wrote this book and the publisher herself was Correa. And she said, I think your relationship's a really important part of the story. I really want to include this in the book. And so I said, okay. She convinced me. I put it in the book. I turned in that manuscript. And then I thought, oh, shit. Like, I have to tell people about this. They can't find out on the shelves of Barnes & Noble. I mean, my family knows, my close friends know, but, wider networks of people don't know about this. And I started thinking about telling people one by one. And
did you make a list of the people you wanted to tell first?
Oh, gosh. I mean, it was just so many people, like old colleagues that would be offended because we were together and dating, exploring a relationship while I was still working, while I was, a lot of people would be offended. And so I thought, this sounds miserable to have these one-on-one conversations. And I've got to deal with their own processing and kind of their shock. What if I'm a writer? What if I just write this? I'll just write it down. People can talk shit behind my back and then come to me when they're processed. This feels a lot better. And so I write a blog post about this article, just about my experience. And I was writing for some national publications at the time. One of them picked up this blog post. I went to bed. And when I woke up the next morning, 100,000 people had shared it.
Wow.
And so I wake up to, I kid you not, literally millions of people talking about my sex life. And we can joke about it today because this was 8 years ago, but it was not such a joke. My therapist got a phone call that day.
Yeah, you must have been freaked out.
Oh, completely freaked out. It was, I was hearing from all sides. Some people were, accusing me of lying. Some people were telling me I'm not actually queer and I don't deserve to, have any, part of the community. Some people are inviting me to headline pride parades. Some people, it was just, some people are telling me that it changed their life and they accepted themselves. And so you're getting, thousands of emails a day. It
Right.
was the most surreal experience I've ever had in my entire life. And I pretty much just shut down. I didn't want to talk about this experience. I didn't want to kind of keep going with it. And then I had, one of these two kids, really, these grad students reached out to me about 6 months after this and said, Mike, this is where Broadway is going. Can we have the rights to your story? And I was kind of like, what are you talking about? And they, I was wondering this because the timeline is so screwy to me because this is a surreal experience. But they emailed me about 6 months after this. So I was wondering, because I wouldn't have seen this. Like, I was getting so many emails a day at this point. And I mean, I was on NPR, Huffington Post, like they all wanted to talk to me. It was very surreal. So I get this email and I'm kind of like, I don't know. Like, if you're really serious, sure. Tell me how serious you are. It's not going anywhere, but this little school project can happen. Okay.
Right.
So they come to Boston. They interview both of us for about an hour. And I don't hear boo. And I'm thinking, this is nothing. I don't really think about it. I go on with my life. Garrett and I are married today. We've been together for over 10 years now. We have been married for 4.5 years. Thank you. Very, very happy in our relationship. And I get an email in summer 2020 that because of COVID, these two producers had more time and they finished the script. And I'm like, okay, sure. I'm not thinking much about what that means. Then I get another email that says, we are partnered with a college and we're going to workshop this. I think, okay, cool. A little school project. I like this.
Yeah.
And then I hear we just got accepted to the New York Theater Festival and we are premiering this, off-Broadway. And so, it's really hard to wrap your head around that. And so we are in talks with a lot of, it's incredible what's happening with this thing. It very well could go to Broadway very soon. But I went to see this off-Broadway show about a week and a half ago now, and I don't like musicals. Let me just start by saying that. I think musicals are boring overall. This was by far the most exceptional piece of art I've ever seen in my entire life. It was, people ask me what it felt like to see this. It was biographical in a way that was kind of like, oh yeah, that happened. Like, I feel like I can't have an opinion about it because that is literally what happened. But the way that they use the music and the way that most queer media is about externalized homophobia, which is important. We need to be talking about that. This is about internalized homophobia and this journey and this process that, at the end of the day, we're just two people. And, it's called Straightforward. And I hated that title because I was kind of like, it's a little on the nose, like evolving straightness, sure.
Yeah.
But what I realized watching it is that it's a straightforward love story. It's so obvious when you see this on stage. And I wrote in the article that, we're here for a short amount of time on Earth. And when in any moment we have one decision to make. Do we move toward or away from love? And what is so clear when you watch this is that these people are in love. And are you going to slap that in the face, or are you just going to run straight forward toward it?
Wow. When you were watching your story on stage, obviously it brought you back to that moment. What were your emotions like at that point?
Oh gosh, all over the place, right? My heart was pumping because there's also, you have to think you're not just watching this for you. You're watching this for, like, my parents are going to see this, my family, my friends are going to see this, right? So you're kind of thinking about these intimate moments that I have talked about, on NPR and a lot of different places, my story, my relationship. What I don't talk about is the messy bits of the first 6 months, because that's hard to talk about, right? Navigating first kiss or first exploring any form of intimacy, or, having these hard conversations about, like, I'm not comfortable with that. I don't want to do that. And being really vulnerable and admitting some level of love. And so this musical is only those first 6 months. And so, there's really intense. There's one scene that just blew my mind where it's the first time that they're intimate, and they're in boxers in a bed. And the producers did a really clever thing. So they decided they wanted to honor the fact that same-sex couples can often exchange clothing, right? Like, I literally wore my husband's shoes to the show. So what they did was, early on, when Mike, the character about me, is vomiting blood and he's shivering, Garrett gives him his sweater. And throughout the show, he's wearing the sweater a lot. And then once they have sex, this kind of intimate moment, Mike is sleeping, so his clothes are off. He's just in his boxers. And Garrett is gripping the sweater and singing. And it's this really intense singing about, the song's called Blinding. It's about love is blinding. And, like, he's so confused and he's so blinded by this moment. And when Mike wakes up, they get in a fight and he screams, "I'm not effing gay." And the entire theater, there's just this deafening silence. And everybody's intent. Everybody feels tensed up. And regardless of what your experiences in life are, you can feel exactly what they're feeling. And, it was the most beautiful moment in an art form I've ever seen. But there's also, my heart is pumping because this isn't that far off from what happened. And I'm thinking about, I don't think anybody, number one, wants people talking about their sex life with their parents, but number two, a depiction of it on stage for people to see.
With music.
Exactly.
Wow. What does Garrett think about the play itself now?
Yeah, so he loves it. He's a little bit more of a musical fan than I am, so he thought it was amazing. But Garrett is a very private person, and neither of us intended for any of this to happen. I really just wanted to tell a few people in my life about our experience. And there was a long time where I wasn't okay with it, or I wasn't happy with it, and he wasn't. We had a stalking situation. People were stalking him, actually.
Wow.
So there was a lot of kind of downsides to this. And people asked me to write books about this. And I kind of said, no, I don't want to talk about it. I don't want to give interviews about it. I'm so done with this. It felt really invasive. And then, 7 years go by, a lot changes. We've kind of, and the conversations around sexual fluidity have changed in those 8 years. So this is, you have to remember, this was early days of like even social media. I think Instagram was really new at the time this came out. And people were always asking me, like, why aren't you posting pictures of your sexy boyfriend? I remember. And I was kind of like, that's not us. Like, I don't want to be this influencer. This is not me. And so, Garrett's a very private person, but I think what really spoke to me is a friend of mine said, he was talking about the famous episode on Ellen when Ellen came out. And he said that at the time he was really struggling with suicidal ideation. And watching that episode and seeing the actors, even the straight actors like Laura Dern and Oprah, going to bat for this moment really made him realize that maybe this world isn't what he thought it was. Maybe people can support him. Maybe there's a place for him in this world. And I think in any situation like this, you have to kind of realize, like, this isn't just my story. This is bigger than me. This is other people's experiences. And I've had to really learn how to get out of my own way. And so has Garrett. And realize, like, this is about two characters on the stage. Yes, it's inspired by a real life story, what actually happened to us. But it also, if this can save lives, if this can help people to feel normal, if this can even help people who are homophobic to look at the internalized homophobia within themselves, whether queer or non-queer, that I'm okay with. And so I think that's really shifted the way I talk about this.
And when you gave permission to the producers to use your story, how much input did you provide for this story?
So this is a really advantageous situation for me, to be honest with you. Other than them using our names, we have, for example, Garrett was in a relationship with a woman for 6 years. She's involved. She's in the musical. We can change the name of anybody else. We can protect their identity. And every time they made a script change, they ran it by us.
Oh, okay.
And I think we were kind of like, no, this is your story. Like, it's okay. But what I was surprised by is how biographical it was. I mean, I don't remember what I told them in the interview, but I must have been pretty accurate and descriptive because they knew things that I couldn't imagine somebody would know. And I think they brought their own experiences into it, their own, journey with sexuality as well. And I think that's what's beautiful. Like, one of the actors is straight who played me. And he said this brought him on his own journey of really exploring himself, because this isn't just a queer story. It's a story of anyone who struggled with facing life and redefining themselves in that moment. And I think that's a universal story.
Absolutely. Mike, what was your first reaction when you saw the actor who is playing you?
Weird, right? It was, the good news is I knew who he was ahead of time. He started following me on Instagram, so I followed him back, and I was able to get a sense of him. And the weirdest thing is to think, how does somebody interpret you outside of you, right? Like, how do you seem to the world, and what I had to kind of get over with my therapist and myself is like, this isn't me. This is what he picked up from an article and one interview, right? Like, this isn't actually me. But strangely, I felt this kind of bond, like this strange bond over, we both had a relationship to this character, separate relationships to him, but a relationship nonetheless. And that's been really great. I mean, whether he gets recast or not, I feel like I'm always going to remember this particular actor.
What's one thing that you want people to walk away with from checking out Straightforward and hearing your story from this point on?
Yeah, I think that bottom line that, we're here for a short time. Life isn't all that long. And if we are lucky enough to experience love in any way, run straight towards it, run straight forward to it, right? Identity isn't something that is, identity isn't the summation of all of our past experiences. I think that's how we think about it. Identity is who we choose to be in this moment, right? Whether we are struggling with addiction, substance abuse, identity, gender, sexuality, whatever it is, we have the opportunity to choose here and now. Am I going to move toward love? Whatever that means to us. And I think that feels so universal to me. And I hope that we've all got internalized homophobia, myself included, because we live in a homophobic world, right? We live in a racist world. We live in a sexist world. We live in a transphobic world. My hope is that everybody watching this can feel connected to these characters and connected to their struggle. And hopefully we change homophobia from the inside out.
Absolutely. I bet it was obviously scary in the beginning. How has this changed you? Is it kind of a sigh of relief that your story is out there? There's no hiding.
Yeah, that's been a long journey too, right? 8
Yeah.
years of this. But yes, I think that I'm really proud of who I am. I'm proud of our relationship. We have an amazing engagement story, crazy, crazy story that ended up being such a beautiful love story. And one thing that story made me realize was just, you know, I'm not asking Garrett to marry me that one day. I don't have one shot at this. Every day of my life, I just wake up, I ask myself, am I still game to do this? And I ask you to love me. Today's just one of those days. And I think that's kind of how I've come to approach all of life is, I've got a shot at this. I've only got a small time here. So I could have died, and thankfully I'm better. I have some, you know, health precautions I take today, but that's okay. But I am alive today. And so if I get to be here, who am I to slap love in the face?
Right. And you look great. And thank you so much for being here and sharing your story. Is there a website or
There is,
social media that we
yeah.
can connect?
So right now, they just had their run. They are finished with this initial run, but I will tell you, the former theater critic at large of Broadway World gave them a glowing review. So I think this is not the last you'll see of this. I mean, people are really excited about it. They're in talks with a bunch of producers. So they are in the process of fundraising right now. So you can go to straightforwardmusical.com if you want more information about the musical. They also have an Instagram page. And I know they're going to be doing a cabaret fundraiser in August to try to raise money for the next run, as well as a GoFundMe. So we will see, but I'm pretty sure there will be a full spring run next spring.
Awesome. And I'll be adding all that to the episode's notes so people will know. Mike Lamele, thank you so much for your time. I do appreciate it. Thank you. God bless you.
Thank you so much for having me.